Hey, welcome to UK Wildcrafts. So early summer is a time to be foraging for flowers, fruits and seeds. And the places to be foraging are the areas that get the most sunlight. So field edges, hedgerows, alongside rivers and forest clearings. This is pineapple weed, Matricaria discoidea. A very nice little herb. As its name suggests, tastes just like pineapple. In fact, its key identifier is if you crush the flowers or the leaves and smell them, they smell exactly like pineapple. The leaves are feather-like, very similar to chamomile, and the flowers look a bit like daisies, just without the white petals. They're very common on waste grounds and the edges of fields, especially on walkways and paths. They really like compressed, shallow soil, so anywhere that's been walked over. A little tip when you're finding them is, if you're in a field, look where there is like a stile or a gate where a lot of people congregate when they're entering or leaving the field, so that soil is a lot more compressed and you're much more likely to find pineapple weed either there or just on paths like this one here. So I usually just collect the flower head and just the top few leaves. They're the freshest, tastiest part, and they're good sort of sprinkled into salads, or the best use for them is to steep them in hot water and make a nice pineapple flavoured tea. This is fireweed, or rosebay willow herb. You can spot it quite easy this time of year because of its spikes of bright pink flowers. It likes to grow in open areas and waste grounds, and particularly areas that have previously been burnt, where it gets one of its common names from, fireweed. This is a useful plant to know for a forager because it has several edible parts and at different times of the year. In spring, and if you're lucky in summer, you can eat the young shoots, which are a little bit similar to asparagus. And under the ground, these shoots are connected by edible rhizomes. In early summer, we have three main edible uses for the plant. First of all, the leaves, which are better when they're younger and a darker green, although the older ones that are light green are good for making a herbal tea. The leaves are long and narrow, and they look similar to willow leaves, which is where they get their other common name from, willow herb. They have a prominent white midrib, and you can see that the veins on the leaf don't reach the edge. They loop round. The flowers are also edible. They don't really have much flavour, but they add nice colour to dishes. They bloom progressively from the bottom of the flower head to the top. The flowers are usually around 3 or 4 centimetres wide, and they have 4 pink or purple petals. And they each have 4 narrower, darker purple sepals, which are here. They have a protruding style, and they each have 4 stigmas. So that's the style there, and the stigmas. The stems grow upright and are green, sometimes with a bit of red coloration. And in my opinion, these contain the best edible part of the plant, and that is the pith. And to get to that, we need to cut the stem near the base. And then we can just take off the flower head and strip off the leaves, and we can use those for making tea. So then you're just left with the stem, and then with a knife just cut down the whole length. And you can see all the pith in the middle. And just take the edge of your knife, just the point of your knife, and just scrape it out. And this pith tastes just like cucumber. This is Honesty, Lunaria annua, and this time of year what we're after are the little seeds inside these seed pods. So the disc-like seed pods will start forming in late spring, and now in early summer they're just about ready to take. So what you do is just collect up the whole seed pod, take it home and just dry it for a few days, and then you can peel them open and take out the seeds, grind them to a powder, and then just add a little bit of cold water and white wine vinegar, and that's how you make mustard. The leaves look quite similar to garlic mustard. They're ovate and come to a point, and they're serrated. The leaves higher up on the plant are sessile, so they don't have a stem. But the lower down ones do have a stem. In fact, the lower down leaves, the stems are channeled. So in spring it has purple or white flowers, and as it's a member of the Brassica family, those flowers are cruciform, or 4 petals forming a cross. The flowers and the leaves are edible as well. The younger leaves are better, and they have a mild mustardy cabbage flavour. But by far the best part of this plant are these seeds. Elderflower has to be one of my favourite early summer wild edibles. You can use these flowers for making cordial, syrups, or a nice sparkling elderflower wine. Usually the first 2 weeks of June are the best time to collect the elderflowers. The elderflowers have 5 small white petals, and they grow in umbels or umbrella-like clusters. I've done a much more detailed video on identifying elderflowers in the elder tree. I'll leave the link to that in the description of this video. This is Meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria, and this is a nice easy one to identify. It likes to grow in damp marshy grounds and is common alongside rivers. So the leaves are darker green on top and paler underneath. The terminal leaf has 3 lobes, and those leaves are serrated, and they have a bit of a crinkly appearance. So what makes Meadowsweet so distinctive is it has first of all a red petiole or leaf stem, and it has pairs of opposing leaves which are larger, and in between those pairs you'll find groups of much smaller leaves. These leaves are edible, and they're better when they're younger like this, although they do have a bit of a medicinal flavour to them. So the best part of Meadowsweet are the flowers, which aren't quite ready yet. They're just starting to bud now, and I find when elderflowers are going out of season, Meadowsweet is just coming into season, and you can use them in very similar ways to elderflower. You can use them for like fritters and flavourings. It's often used for flavouring mead, which the name Meadowsweet derives from. It's nothing to do with meadows. It takes the name from mead, which is used for flavouring. It does contain salicylic acid, which is similar to aspirin. It's like a painkiller, so it's best not to consume too much of it. And another thing to be aware of is these like to grow in damp, marshy grounds, and that is the same habitat as this plant here, which, if you're a forager and you don't know this one, I really advise you do get to know it. This is hemlock water dropwort, and this is a deadly plant. It also has white flowers, although the flowers don't look anything like Meadowsweet. It's still a good idea to learn it. And so you see you've got the Meadowsweet growing here, and all of this next to it, as far as you can see, that's all hemlock water dropwort. So just be careful when you're picking it. These are linden flowers, or the flowers of the lime tree. And you can see they've just started to open up now. We're in early June. And this tree is absolutely packed full of them. Every branch has got the flowers on. So you can collect a lot of flowers from these trees without even affecting its pollination rate. There are 3 species of lime in the UK: small leaf lime, large leaf lime and common lime. With all 3 species, the leaves and flowers are edible. Linden flowers make a really nice tea, and you can collect a nice big batch of them and dry them for making tea all year. And it's got properties that help with headaches, anxiety and insomnia. The flowers are a yellowish green colour, and they each have 5 petals. And they come with a wing that helps the seed distribute by the wind. The leaves of lime trees are roughly heart-shaped. They're serrated and have a pointed tip, and they're asymmetrical, so one half of the heart will be a bit bigger than the other. These leaves are edible, but this time of year they're a bit too tough. You want them in spring when they're still a bit translucent. They make a fairly decent substitute for lettuce. This is Ribwort plantain. This time of year we're after these flower heads that taste just like mushroom. You see they've got really small white flowers coming out of them, and they grow on flower stems that are leafless. All the leaves are at the base of the plant. And the stems are square and have really fine hairs on them. The leaves are lanceolate, or long and narrow. They have strong veins running the length of the leaf. If you turn the leaf over, you can see them more clearly. And if you break a leaf in half gently, often those veins will stay intact because they're very strong, and it's a good way to identify the leaf. They're very nutritious leaves. I don't think they have the best flavour, they're a bit medicinal, but I do use them in smoothies. Another use for them is they staunch bleeding, so if you have a little cut, you can like chew these up and put them onto the wound, and they help the wound heal. These are very common. You'll find them in pretty much any patch of grassland, or maybe in your garden. And there are several types of plantain. There's Ribwort plantain like this, broadleaf plantain and hoary. They're all edible and all very common. These are wild cherry, Prunus avium. There are several species of cherries that grow wild in the UK. All of them are edible, though some are very sour. These ones are nice and sweet though. They're very similar to the cherries you buy in the shop, though these are quite a bit smaller. And cherries in the shop, you can easily pay £3 or £4 for a small punnet. There's no need to spend your money because these are very common in UK woodlands and parks. Cherries need a lot of light to develop. The more light they get, the sweeter the fruit will be. So it's best to try and find trees that are south facing into an open area. Cherry has a very distinctive bark. It's a greyish brown colour, and it has striations running horizontally across the bark, and these are called lenticels, and that is basically the tree's way of breathing. They help with the exchange of gases between the tree and the atmosphere, and they look a little bit like a tiger stripe pattern. The leaves are oval, toothed, and come to a point. And if you look where the leaf meets the stem, you'll see two red glands. The flowers appear in April. They're white or pink and have 5 petals. The only thing that you may confuse these wild cherries for are bird cherry. Now, bird cherry are edible, but they're very sour and can be mildly toxic if you eat too many of them. The main difference to look for is with wild cherry. If you look at where the cherries meet the stem, they form in clusters and all meet at the same point on the stem on a little protrusion. Whereas bird cherry, they meet the stem on stalks singularly. Now, with all cherries, the stones are toxic, so make sure you spit out the stones. The dog rose, Rosa canina, is a shrub that grows to about 1.5 meters, although it climbs other plants and trees and can grow to about 3 meters. This time of year we're after the flowers. They don't smell as strong as ornamental roses, but they do have that distinctive rose smell. And the petals can be used in flavouring syrups and you can make rose water from them. The dog rose has long arcing stems that are covered in really sharp thorns that curve backwards. Those thorns can be red on younger, newer growth. The leaves are compound. They're usually made up of 3 pairs of opposing leaves and then 1 terminal leaf. Those leaves are oval and toothed, usually a shinier dark green on the top and lighter green and paler underneath. They're very common on woodland edges, in parks and in hedgerows. And this time of year you'll see these flowers just about everywhere. They can be either white or have a pinkish tinge to them. Early summer is also the perfect time for the young florets of common hogweed, Heracleum sphondylium. The florets are just like, almost like a wild broccoli. It's the unopened flower heads. And they're really nice, sort of just steamed and cooked with a little bit of butter. And you can also find the seeds of the same plant, common hogweed, and when they're green like this, immature, they taste just like cardamom, so you can use those like dried and then ground up. You can use them in curries and that sort of thing. I've done a more in-depth video on this plant because it's not a really easy one to ID, it's not for beginners. And it's from the Umbellifer family, and there's some deadly poisonous species in that family, so if you do want to learn this plant, check out my other video. I'll leave a link to it in the description on how to identify common hogweed. So Alexander's is another Umbellifer, so one to be very careful of. But its seeds are ready to harvest this time of year. If you don't know how to identify this plant, then I'd wait to learn it in early spring, because now in summer most of its vegetation has died away, so you can't see its key identifiers. But if you do know how to identify this plant, then you can harvest the seeds, which taste just like green peppercorns. This is honeysuckle. The flowers are edible and they make a nice tea when dried. So the trumpet-like flowers are a creamy colour and they go more yellow with age, and they've often got a pink or reddish flush to them. It's one of those plants that you'll often smell before you see it. It's got like a nice strong sweet smell, and that smell is often stronger in the evening or at night when it's trying to attract nocturnal pollinators. But the berries of honeysuckle are poisonous, so don't eat the berries. Honeysuckle is a climber, so you'll find it twining around other bushes and trees. It's common in woodland edges and in hedgerows. So the leaves are a dark green, lighter green underneath, and they're oval, and they have an entire margin, so no serrations, and they grow in opposing pairs. Thanks for watching UK Wildgrass. If you haven't already, you can subscribe here.